Discover the incredible story of the shoeless girl who touched a millionaire. So 1 out of 25. In the heart of Maplewood, laughter echoed through the air, blending harmoniously with the sweet aroma of fresh pancakes sizzling on the griddle. Mia stood behind the counter of her family's diner, her bare feet dusted in the fine grit of the dirt road outside. At just 17, she understood the weight of her dreams: a local veterans center for the community, a place where stories would be shared and connections forged. But here, in this small town, dreams seemed as far away as the nearest city skyline. Every morning, as the townsfolk trickled in, Mia greeted them with her infectious smile, listening to their tales, absorbing their wisdom. Each conversation fueled her determination to change the narrative of Maplewood. Yet, she often felt like a bird trapped in a cage, wings clipped by the harsh realities of her surroundings. Hope was her only compass, guiding her toward an uncertain future. Then, the unexpected happened. Mark Patterson, a sharply dressed millionaire CEO, strode into the diner for a charity event, his presence casting a long shadow over Mia's simple world. With his expensive suits and polished demeanor, he radiated a kind of confidence she'd only seen on television. At first glance, he dismissed her clad in a faded apron, hair pulled loosely, bare feet nestled beneath the counter. But beneath that unassuming exterior, Mia's spirit burned brightly. One rainy afternoon, fate threw them together. During a brief power outage, the diner descended into darkness, leaving only the sounds of raindrops tapping against glass. Mark found himself drawn to Mia, who filled the silence with heartfelt stories of the diner's history and the dreams she held for her town. Something about the way her eyes lit up with passion began to unravel his carefully constructed facade. For the first time, he saw not just a shoeless girl, but a beacon of resilience. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as the discussions heated up concerning funding for Mia's Veterans Center, misunderstandings flared. Mark's corporation became a lightning rod for resentment, and Mia's dreams were caught in a tornado of backlash. Yet, every time the townspeople rallied behind her, Mia's resolve grew stronger. She stood tall in the diner, feet firmly planted on the old wooden floor, calling out the injustices that marred the hopes of her community. The weight of her words clashed with Mark's privilege, compelling him to see the world through her eyes. Every patron echoed the sentiments of struggle and perseverance. The tension simmered, leaving a palpable energy in the diner. In that moment, Mark began to question everything he thought he knew about success: what it meant, what it cost, and the human price attached to it. As the chapter closed, the diner fell silent. Hope and despair mingled in the air, as both Mia and Mark confronted their truths. The spark between them wasn't simply about two worlds colliding. It was about the resilience that could challenge the very fabric of society. Would they bridge the chasm, or would they let the weight of prejudice shatter their chance for redemption? As they locked eyes, the questions loomed heavy, urging readers to wonder what lies ahead in their intertwined fates. Mia stood still, the weight of silence stretching like the space between thunder and lightning. The world outside continued on, but in that diner, time seemed to pause. Mark's gaze settled on her, searching for a truth that wrapped itself around their lives like the scent of coffee mixed with old wood. He hadn't just stumbled into a diner. He had stumbled into a life full of grit and dreams. I didn't come here to ignore what you're saying, he finally said, breaking the tension. I need to understand. Why this center? What does it mean to you? Mia took a deep breath, her heart racing. It's more than just a building. It's safety, it's home, for those who served. They deserve to share their stories without fear, to feel valued in our community. It's a space where wounds can heal. Her voice trembled slightly, the weight of her vision catching in her throat. As the words floated between them, Mark felt the walls around his world tremble, too. He considered his past decisions, the endless pursuit of profits and accolades, and how often he forgot about the faces behind those dollar signs. Their lives felt so separate from one another. Yet here they were, two people stitched together by an idea, a hopeful dream. Just then, the door swung open, letting in the cold wind and a few patrons who hadn't been at the diner that morning. Mia quickly wiped her face, the mask of professionalism slipping back on as she greeted them. "Welcome. Please have a seat." "Coffee." A young man, one of the newcomers, looked directly at Mark. "Hey, aren't you that CEO? What brings you to our little town?" he asked, an edge of challenge in his voice. Mia's heart sank, knowing that some in the community wouldn't trust Mark simply because of his wealth. She watched as Mark opened his mouth to speak, but the weight of unasked questions filled the room instead. Would he respond with platitudes, or would he show his true self? "I'm here because I've realized I need to do better," Mark finally said, the conviction in his voice cutting through the atmosphere. "I want to support this community and the veterans who have given so much. I want to listen." His words, unexpected and humble, slipped past the defenses that the townsfolk had built around their hearts. With each reply, the tension lifted a fraction. It was a flicker of possibility in a room that had felt so heavy moments before. Mia caught a glimpse of hope as whispers of approval began to ripple through the patrons. Perhaps Mark was more than just a suit and tie. Maybe he was willing to step beyond his comfort zone. Yet doubts still loomed large. Could the community truly forgive him for the scars he had unwittingly caused? And could Mark earn the trust he needed to spearhead Mia's dream? As they shared smiles and nods, the air filled with cautious optimism. After the diners settled in with their meals, Mark leaned toward Mia, lowering his voice. "What's next?" he asked, his eyes filled with a mix of determination and uncertainty. Mia stared at him, swallowing hard. As her heart raced, a flurry of thoughts raced through her mind about strategy meetings and potential hurdles. But deep down, she also realized the direction their paths were taking, one that could lead to either triumph or disaster. "We create a plan, but we need the community. I can't do it alone." The fire of purpose ignited in her soul as she grabbed a piece of paper. Jotting down her ideas, her dreams flowed freely like a river breaking through the dam. And for Mark, it was a revelation. He was no longer simply a benefactor. He was an ally, a partner ready to fight alongside her. But as the diner filled with laughter and chatter around them, Mia couldn't shake an uneasy feeling at the back of her mind. Were they truly ready for the challenges ahead? Would the community embrace change? "Will you trust me?" she whispered softly, looking into Mark's eyes, wanting him to understand the gravity of the road ahead. The cafe glimmered with possibilities, yet shadows of doubt crept in. As their day unfolded, a new chapter in both their lives began to mold itself. Fraught with questions and hope, what did it mean for Mia if things didn't go as planned? What risks would they face? The future loomed closer, but so did the storm of uncertainty. Mia's eyes danced nervously as her pen moved across the paper, the rhythm of her thoughts clashing with the sounds of clinking cutlery and the chatter around them. Each scribbled word rekindled her determination, but the weight of responsibility squarely pressed on her shoulders. How could she ask this community to trust a man with a seemingly tainted past? Mark's gaze flickered to the dozens of faces around him, each person in the diner carrying their history, their scars. "What if we held a community meeting?" he suggested, a determined spark shining in his eyes. "A chance for everyone to voice their concerns and ideas." "It's a start." Mia paused, her heart skipping a beat. It was bold, perhaps reckless, but could it foster the trust they so desperately needed? "Yes, that could work," she replied slowly, feeling the tides of hope swell within her again. "But we need to make sure it's genuine. We can't just sit behind a table. We've got to be out there, in the community." "I can do that," Mark promised, his voice laced with sincerity. "I want to do that. I can share my story, show them I'm not just a businessman looking to exert control. I want to be a part of their lives." The words hung between them, carrying a weight that made Mia's pulse quicken with both anticipation and fear. He truly wanted to change, but was change enough to mend bonds that had never been formed? Suddenly, the young man from earlier approached their table again. "Listen," he said, crossing his arms, "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this town doesn't just open its doors to rich guys looking for a charity case." His voice held an edge, sharpened by skepticism. Mia felt her heart race again as she responded, "And we're not asking you to. We're interested in real change, not handouts. This center is about empowerment for veterans, for our community. It's about giving a voice to those who have felt ignored." Mark nodded, his expression earnest. "And it starts with listening, really listening. I've spent too long hearing what I want to hear, ignoring how my choices affect real people. I come here with humility and a desire to learn. I need your help." The tension thickened as the crowd fell quiet, eyes darting between the three of them. Murmurs floated amongst the patrons. Instead of retreating, Mark leaned forward, his every word spilling with conviction. "Let us prove ourselves to you. We want this to be a partnership, not a transaction." Mia held her breath, praying for acceptance, for an opening in their walls. Could they find common ground amidst the doubts? Slowly, the young man's posture softened. "All right, let us see what you've got. But you better be ready for some tough questions. This community won't hold back." Relief flooded through Mia as a flicker of hope ignited in Mark's eyes. "I wouldn't want it any other way," Mark replied, a hint of a smile crossing his lips. Something was shifting, perhaps the tide was turning, and they were beginning to carve out that partnership. As the conversations resumed, Mia felt a mix of exhilaration and nervousness. She couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was just the tip of something profound. But with their plan laid bare, she sensed shadows flickering at the corners, old resentments, lingering fears. "Tomorrow," Mia said, her voice steady, "we'll start reaching out. Flyers, social media posts. We get this community meeting on the map. Everyone deserves a chance to be heard." Her heart was racing as she acknowledged all her dreams coming to life. But in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the echo of uncertainty. As the laughter returned to the diner and the lightness seeped back into their conversations, Mia couldn't help but wonder what other hidden obstacles awaited them. She gazed into Mark's eyes, full of determination, yet tinted with trepidation. The journey was only just beginning, and the thrill of what could come next filled the air. Tomorrow would be the first true test of their resolve, but what challenges lay in store beyond just a meeting? How would they face the fears buried deep in the hearts of those they wanted to help? Would they break through or crash against the walls of doubt once more? Morning light trickled through the kitchen window, casting warm patterns on the worn wooden table. Mia blinked into the brightness, trying to shake off the lingering shadows of fear from the night before. Today was the day. She had sent out the flyers and posted on social media. The community meeting would start in just a few hours. The turbulent mix of excitement and anxiety churned in her stomach as she recalled the conversations from the diner. She had never felt the weight of responsibility so heavily before. Was she really ready to ask her community to trust Mark? What if the skepticism hadn't faded? What if they showed up with anger instead of hope? As she prepared a simple breakfast, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Mark. "I'm on my way. Let us make this happen, Mia." His enthusiasm leaked through the screen, and she couldn't help but smile despite the knots in her chest. Minutes later, she stood outside her apartment, surveying the street. People passed, some on their way to work, others just starting their day. She spotted a group of veterans chatting by the old fountain. Today's meeting could be a bridge, a chance for connection. Just then, a voice called from behind her. "Are you really going through with this?" It was the young man from the diner, skepticism evident in his voice. "I am." Mia wiped her hands on her jeans, standing a little taller. "We need to hear what everyone has to say." His expression was still guarded, but there was a flicker of curiosity. Can he really be trusted? What happens if he just waltzes in and everything falls apart? Mia swallowed hard, realizing that his words were echoed in her own anxieties. "I believe he genuinely wants to help, but we can only find out if we give him a chance." The man's brow furrowed. "That's a lot of faith to put in someone." "I know," she replied with a nod. "But if we just keep protecting our hearts, we may miss out on something meaningful." Mia's words seemed to reach him, if only slightly. He studied her for a moment before he finally shrugged. "Well, good luck then. You're gonna need it." A whirlwind of thoughts tossed in her mind as she made her way to the community center. What if this meeting didn't turn out as she hoped? What if the frustrations were too deep, the wounds still too fresh? Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat resonating with her doubts. Inside the center, chairs were set up in a circle, and Mark was already moving about, greeting anyone who walked through the door. He seemed to draw energy from negotiating with some of the old-timers who frequented the space. Mia could see he was trying to connect, to mesh his goals with their history, and she admired his passion. But as more people filled the room, the chatter turned into a chaotic blend of voices. She sensed the undertones of skepticism lurking among the crowd. Old resentments, like ghosts, flitted through the space, and Mia could feel the atmosphere grow increasingly charged. She took a deep breath, stepping slightly forward, searching for the right words to bridge the divide. "Thanks for coming, everyone. We're here because we want to listen, not just to reply. This is about the community, our shared experiences." The murmur crescendoed, interrupted by a gruff voice from the back. "And how do we know you're not just here to sweep it under the rug? What proof do we have that you're really invested?" That question hung heavily in the air, cutting through the tension like a knife. Mia glanced at Mark, whose expression shifted, a mix of determination and concern flooding his face. She felt the burning weight of anticipation. This was the moment. We don't want to dodge hard questions. We want to tackle them together. But would that be enough? As the questioners chimed in, the room buzzed with mixed emotions, distrust battling with the flickers of hope. Faces turned toward Mia and Mark, each person uncertain but curious about the potential for change. And it was in that moment, the pulse of uncertainty thick in the air, that she realized how fragile this connection could be. What could this meeting become? Would they grow closer together, or let the past dictate their future? Or, even worse, would they let fear win? Tonight, the truth of their intentions would unfold, but a deeper revelation shivered just at the edge of their understanding, waiting to be unearthed. The murmurs in the room intensified, each voice clamoring for attention, each tone laced with uncertainty. Mia could feel the sweat gathering at her temples as she scanned the crowd. They looked at her, expectant but guarded. Mark stepped forward, attempting to assert his authority. "Everyone, let us take a deep breath," he said confidently, a soft smile playing on his lips. "I know there's a lot of history here, but history doesn't have to dictate our future." A few heads nodded, but others remained stiff, arms crossed tightly against their chests. Mia swallowed hard, hoping Mark's gentle charm would soften their hearts. Still, it felt like a mountain they had to climb. "I understand your concerns," she added, her voice steady though her heart raced. "We all share a history here, but what we choose to do with it is what's crucial now." A woman in the front row, with gray hair piled high, raised her hand. "You talk about history, but what you don't seem to understand is the scars of it. This town has been hurt. We've tried trusting." Before her voice broke slightly, revealing a painful vulnerability. Mia's breath caught in her throat. That echoed the fear that curled in her stomach. "And it's understandable," she said softly. "But we need to come together so we can heal. We can't move forward alone." Mark stepped closer to Mia, drawing strength from her words. "We want to hear your stories, your frustrations. It's not easy, and I want to pretend that it is. But if we all come to the table, we can find a way through this." The air crackled with tension, and Mia's heart ached for every skeptical soul in the room. She understood their pain. She saw it etched on their worried faces. "How can we help you?" Mia asked, feeling the weight of her own vulnerability shine through. She was putting herself out there, and she hoped they could feel her sincerity. That a man with dark circles under his eyes pushed off the wall, moving closer. "What if we don't want your help?" he said, his voice low and steady. "What if our wounds are too deep?" The question hung in the room, thick with despair. A silence fell over the group, and Mia felt as if time stood still. "Then we talk about it," she asserted, her own fear bleeding into her resolve. "Nothing will change unless we start somewhere. This is our chance to finally listen, to support each other." Mark nodded, stepping back in to encourage dialogue. "We value every voice here. Yours, too." Slowly, someone from the far side of the room began to speak up. Their voice was shaky but determined, like a rock turned over after years buried under dirt. "We want to be part of this, but it's hard to let go of the past." Encouragement sparked in Mia's chest. "That's okay. We can take it step by step." More voices joined in, sharing their concerns, their fears, and a flicker of hope began to light the room. The energy shifted as people started to lean in, more open to the idea of connection, however hesitant. Mia's heart soared, sensing that this vulnerable exchange could finally unlock the barriers that had chained them for years. But as the stories flowed, a trepidation lingered in the air, a note of tension that Mia couldn't shake off. What if the moment turned? If buried memories could betray them all? As the voices merged into a chorus of honesty, another voice broke through the warmth. An unexpected voice, the skeptical young man from the diner. He stood tall, challenging, his face set with resolve. But what if you fail? What if this all crumbles again? Mia held her breath, feeling that old fear rear its head. His question resounded across the room like a thunderclap. Mark shot a glance at Mia, both of them realizing they were at a tipping point. That singular question hung in the air, a fragile line drawn between faith and doubt. Would they be willing to confront the potential of failure, to embrace the possibility of change? Mia took a step forward once more, courage swelling within her. "We may stumble," she said slowly, "but we promise not to fall without each other. Isn't that worth the risk?" The collective sigh that followed felt like an awakening. But the looming shadow of doubt lingered. Would they rise together, or would they scatter to the winds, afraid to reach out? The night was still young, and the most crucial dialogue had just begun. The room held its breath. Mia felt the energy shift, a current running through the crowd as their minds reeled with possibilities. She could see the flickers of doubt, fear, and curiosity playing across their faces. It was a patchwork of emotions, and she noticed how just a subtle change in tension could sway them like leaves in a breeze. Together, Mark breathed, stepping forward with renewed determination. "That's the key word here. We've all been burdened by our past, but let's not let it steal our hope for a better future." He gestured widely, inviting them in with open arms. One by one, faces softened, weary hearts began to uncoil. A middle-aged woman, her eyes shining but haunted, stood up and broke the silence. "My son left after everything that happened. He thought it was best to get away. I tried to follow him, maybe if I could fix what was broken. He didn't want me to. I didn't want to let him down." Mia felt every ounce of pain in the woman's voice like a physical blow. "What if you reached out to him, gave him that chance to speak?" she suggested gently. "It's never too late to mend those ties." "I've tried," the woman replied, tears brimming. "But what if he doesn't want to hear from me?" "Trust takes time," Mia said, her voice steady and warm. "But sometimes, it's worth the risk to show that you care." Another man voiced his concern, this one younger, fidgeting in his seat. "I lost my father to the violence in this town. How can we say we'll change things when the pain runs so deep?" "I can't promise it will be easy," Mark interjected, "but I can promise that we're all here, together. We can start by talking about the pain, acknowledging it, and then finding a way to become stronger for those who've suffered, including you." The dialogue slowly began to reshape the room. More voices emerged from the shadows as deep-seated fears were met with open hearts and minds. Each shared story unclothed them of the layers they'd been hiding behind. Vulnerability, it turned out, was a common thread they could all connect with. As the night enveloped the gathering, the energy pulsated with an electric intensity. But in the corner of Mia's mind, a flicker of dread persisted. What if the very act of opening their wounds tore them apart again? "Can we really do this?" A soft voice questioned from the back, trembling with doubt. "Are we capable of changing what has been so deeply ingrained?" Mia turned towards the voice, almost willing it to speak up louder. "Yes, but we can't just want change, we have to earn it. Each day, we need to remind ourselves why we began this journey in the first place." Just then, the skeptical young man from the diner squeezed through the crowd to join them, his face both determined and defiant. "Maybe I'm not convinced, but I'm willing to give it a try. If you can back up your words with actions, maybe I'll believe." And in that moment, she felt a surge of hope. "Let us take the first step together," she said, her heart lifting. "Let us look forward and create a roadmap for what we want our community to look like." The crowd simmered with possibilities, but just as the momentum built, a loud crash shattered the hopeful atmosphere. Someone had knocked over a chair, and their sudden movement caught everyone off guard. The energy shifted as shocked expressions transformed into whispers of confusion. "What was that?" Mark asked, concern etching his features. Mia's heart raced. Had the past finally caught up with them? It was clear that for every step toward healing, the specter of what had once been loomed just out of reach. And then, the doors swung wide, revealing a shadowy figure silhouetted against the hallway lights. "You think you can simply forget the past?" The voice boomed, challenging everyone in the room. The air thickened with tension again, and Mia could almost feel the weight of their collective fear pressing down. What would the stranger bring? Would they be further pushed back into despair, or could they stand strong together? The night had been promising, but now the stakes felt higher than ever. The crowd froze, eyes glued to the figure in the doorway. The silhouette was imposing, wrapped in shadows, creating an aura of authority that sent a shiver down Mia's spine. Whispers began to ripple through the gathered group. Some people turned away, while others leaned in, curiosity mingling with fear. "I'm not here to stir up old ghosts," the stranger continued, their voice cutting through the air like a knife. "But you need to understand that the past isn't something you can sweep under the rug. It's etched into the very foundation of this community, and ignoring it won't bring healing." Mark stepped closer to the figure, his expression calm but unwavering. "We know that," he said firmly. "But we're trying to build a future where we take responsibility for our actions and choices. Change doesn't happen overnight." The stranger's laughter echoed darkly, a sound that sent a chill through the room. "You think you can change decades of pain with a few heartfelt speeches? People have tried. They always fail." The energy shifted again, uncertainty creeping back into the hearts of those gathered. Mia felt a rush of anger rising within her. "But failing doesn't mean we stop trying," she shouted, her voice breaking through the tension. "Every time we show up for each other, every time we share our stories, we're stitching together a new path that matters." The room went silent, and all eyes turned to her, hungry for answers. This was their chance to make a stand. Every shared story was a thread pulling them closer. Every moment of vulnerability was part of the fabric of their healing. She could feel their strength vibrating, ready to burst through the fear that had paralyzed them. "What do you want, then?" the figure asked, narrowing their eyes as if trying to discern the truth in Mia's heart. "Tell me how you plan to raise this community from the ashes." Mia took a deep breath. "We have to face the bitterness together, acknowledge the hurt we've been through, and maybe even learn from it. But we can't let it define us. We need a vision, a plan to bring hope back into our lives." A woman in the back raised her hand, her voice shaking but resolute. "I want to help the youth. If we can guide them differently, maybe this cycle of pain ends." Another young man spoke up. "If we can create safe spaces for discussions about our fears and concerns, we might just start healing the rift between us." Mia's heart quickened. She could feel a shift happening. The skepticism was melting away, replaced by budding determination. Voices began to fuse together, echoing intentions that were both simple and powerful. "You're wasting your breath," the shadowy figure sneered, stepping further into the light. The features became clearer, revealing a hardened face. "This isn't a fairy tale. People want change for you, or your dreams." "Maybe," Mark said, fists clenching at his sides. "But if we can't at least try, what's the point of us being here? We've quietly suffered long enough." Mia caught a glimmer in the figure's eye, momentarily startled by the vulnerability that flickered beneath the tough exterior. For the first time, she sensed a crack in their resolve, a longing desperately hidden just beneath the surface. "Just remember," the figure warned, voice softening slightly, "hope can be a dangerous thing. It can lead to great joy, but even greater disappointment." The room surged with anticipation, a mix of anxious energy and unyielding hope. They dared to challenge the darkness, but would it push them back into despair or draw them closer together? As the figure stood there, a question hung in the air unasked. Could they confront the shadows and still emerge stronger? The night's south promise felt tantalizingly close, yet the fear of regret loomed just as large. Would they step forward into the uncertain light or retreat back into their old wounds? Just then, a deep crack echoed from the far end of the hall, something shifting underfoot, something unbreakable hiding just out of sight. The crack split the silence like thunder, a rough shudder that reverberated through the old hall. Eyes darted toward the source, hearts racing with both fear and curiosity. It felt as if the building itself was echoing their doubts, the walls groaning under the weight of years of pent-up sadness. Mia's instincts kicked in. "Everyone step back," she shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. She moved instinctively toward the sound, determined not to let fear drive her away. In that moment, She was fueled by something bigger than herself, an urge to protect the flicker of hope that had just ignited among her people. The shadows danced in the dim light as the crowd hesitated, some taking nervous steps away, while others leaned in closely, armed with a patchwork of courage. The figure in the doorway seemed both threatened and intrigued, eyes scanning the scene like an animal sensing an opening to escape or confront. Suddenly, a heavy object fell from the upper rafters, crashing to the floor with a deafening thud. Gasps erupted, echoing through the space. Dust floated in the air, settling like a heavy blanket. Mia peered through the haze, her breath shallow. As the dust cleared, she saw a weathered plaque that had hung there for decades, a faded reminder of a different time, a different community. It read, "Together we rise." The irony struck her like a lightning bolt. "Keep your focus," Mark called out, snapping Mia back to reality. The urgency in his voice was palpable. The crowd needed a leader, and for an instant, that leader was her. A flicker of determination ignited in her heart. "Look," she shouted, pointing at the plaque. "That's what we need to remember. We fell apart when we stopped rising together." A whisper of solidarity swept through the crowd, growing louder with each heartbeat. Even the shadowy figures seemed intrigued, turning slightly toward the fallen emblem of their past. "You think that piece of wood will bring back what's lost?" they asked, voice tainted with doubt. Yet there was a trace of something softer emerging. Mia stepped forward, filling the space with conviction. "It's not just wood," she implored. "It's a reminder of who we were and who we can be again. Everyone here has a piece to contribute. If we bridge our stories together, that's how we heal." Voices began to rise, discontent and dreams mingling in the air. People began to share memories, words pouring out. A man recounted laughter over barbecues long past, while others whispered of sorrows that connected them, scars that seemed to pull together rather than push apart. As they spoke, Mia's heart raced. She could see the walls slowly giving way, the black clouds above parting just enough to let light seep through. It was a collective moment pregnant with possibilities, yet the figure remained, a specter of skepticism. "You may speak of unity, but can you truly trust one another?" Their voice was colder now, ice creeping into the warmth that was blooming. "I believe we can learn to," Mia responded, "but it begins right now. We become bridges, not walls." Her words thrummed through the crowd, and for a moment, the stranger's hardened demeanor slipped like a mask, revealing the turmoil beneath a vulnerable soul that knew all too well the weariness of failure. Just then, another loud crack echoed beneath them, shaking the floor again. This time, though, it felt different. It was as if the very foundations of their reality were shifting. What was that? Someone yelled, panic rising again. With a newfound determination, Mia faced the crowd and the figure. "We can't be afraid of what's below us," she said, raising her voice against the rumbling. "This is our chance to rise. But we need to do it together." The stranger hesitated, the flicker of doubt evaporating under the heat of her passion. The room held its breath, waiting for the next move. In that tense moment, with uncertainty stretching into the silence, Mia wondered, could they truly unite, or would they crumble under the weight of their shared burdens? The floor shook again, not just from the structure, but from an energy building, a force ready to erupt. What lay underneath was pulling them toward a reckoning, one they might never be ready for. Would they confront it, or let it swallow them whole? The ground shook once more, throwing Mia off balance. She stumbled, her heart racing with a mix of adrenaline and fear. The murmurs of the crowd morphed into a chorus of anxiety, faces pale, eyes wide. People began to shift, the knot of uncertainty tightening as the weight of their past loomed heavy over them. Mia clasped her hands together. "Listen to me. This is how we break free." Her voice rang through the air with a fierce clarity, cutting through the rising tide of panic. "We're all standing on the same ground. We're all feeling the tremors of our history. But that's what makes us strong together." The figure at the door took a step forward, curiosity piqued. "You really think rallying around an old plaque is enough? Look around. We're like birds with clipped wings." There was an edge to their words, but something else too, a glimmer of hope buried beneath years of disillusionment. Mia held the figure's gaze, allowing her resolve to penetrate the distance. "You don't just have to believe in the plaque, believe in the people right here with you. Everyone's story matters, and together, we can begin to mend not just walls, but hearts. She extended her arms to the crowd, encouraging them to hold on to each other as strength. One woman, with tear-stained cheeks and a trembling voice, spoke up. I remember the days when we came together for potlucks and movie nights. It felt like home. Her words seemed to cast a thread of nostalgia, swirling around the hall, softening the atmosphere just a bit. Others caught on, slowly finding their voices. A young man, barely out of his teens, shared his dream of a community garden, a place where they could gather and grow together, nourishing their relationships as well as their bodies. Excitement began to ignite the crowd like a splash of bright color on a dreary canvas. Mia felt the swell of energy rising. That's it. Let us bring back the things that made us whole. We can be more than what we were. We can be better. Her heart swelled at the thoughts of laughter returning, friendships blossoming anew. Yet, beneath the joy, the tremors persisted, vibrating through the very essence of their gathering. The figure pulled away slightly, cornered by their own past, wrestling with hope and fear. And what of the darkness lurking underneath us? What if we fail again? With all her heart, Mia said, failure is part of learning. It doesn't define us. How we rise after falling does. Suddenly, the entire room fell eerily silent. A low rumble echoed through the floor, ominous yet strangely inviting. An unseen force seemed to beckon them, urging them to confront their fears. Let us find out what lies beneath, someone from the crowd finally suggested, more of a challenge than a question. Mia caught sight of the shadowy figure, now teetering on the edge of willingness. Yes, let us face it together. We owe it to ourselves and to each other. A unified agreement spread through the crowd, electrifying the air around them. As they gathered closer, almost instinctively linking hands, Mia felt a rush of warmth, a breath of courage pushing back against the darkness. Together, we can bridge the gaps between our hearts. If we trust each other, there's nothing we can't face. But as she looked toward the door, the figure remained, torn between hope and lingering doubt. They were a pivotal part of this. Yet could they take that leap? Before Mia could voice her encouragement, the ground shook intensely again, sending ripples through the hall as it seemed to awaken something deep beneath them. An unsettling sound echoed a pulse, building steadily, challenging them to take the first step. With everyone holding their breath, that moment hung heavy in the air. Would they plunge into the depths of uncertainty, or back away from the very thing that could either shatter them or bring them together? Together we rise, Mia whispered, more to herself than anyone, a quiet yet powerful promise reverberating in her heart. The doors creaked ominously, the shadows in the corners swaying as if alive. What awaited them in the unknown? Would they find the light they had all been yearning for, or succumb to the darkness they feared so deeply? The tension in the room was electric, a fragile balance between fear and hope. Mia and Mark stood side by side, hands clasped, looking at the crowd that had begun to lean in. Curiosity mingled with trepidation. The air pulsed with potential, like a tightly wound spring, waiting to unleash its power. Now's our moment, folks, Mia said, her voice steady against the rising heartbeat of the crowd. What lies beneath might scare us, but it's also the key to our freedom. This cycle of pain can be broken. As the last of her words hung in the air, a quietness enveloped the room. Every person there holding onto the warmth of each other's presence. It felt like they were all a single entity, breathing together, waiting for a spark. Mark took a deep breath, casting a glance toward the shadowy figure still hovering by the door. We need to confront it. The history is part of us, but it doesn't have to define us. We can uncover it and grow, he said, allowing his conviction to flow into the space, daring the audience to believe in their intertwined destinies. I'm not just a stranger in a suit, he continued, voice firm. I've been blind to my privileges. I've come to understand how my decisions impact lives, and I'm here willing to learn, to change. And I'm asking you to trust me. Murmurs passed through the crowd, uncertainty still clinging stubbornly to some, but hope manifested a little more in the eyes around the room. Then, from somewhere in the back, a voice broke through the skeptical young man from earlier. You want trust? You think just saying the words make it real? Change isn't that simple. Mia felt her chest tighten. You're right. It isn't simple. But it starts with acknowledgement. If we don't talk about the hurt, it will swallow us. Together, we can turn it into strength. The shadowy figure stepped forward again, the hardened expression wavering. What happened to this town can't just be brushed away. We've had our cracks. Yes, Mia replied, urgency in her tone. But cracks can let light through. Together, we share the responsibility to shine light on our darkness. She saw a flicker of understanding in the figure's eyes, and it ignited something deep inside her that it was no longer just her dream. It was a shared vision, one that could uplift everyone in the room if only they embraced it. Let us talk about those cracks, Mark said, stepping deeper into the circle, inviting the crowd to open up. What has been buried? What fears are holding you back? One by one, hands began to rise. Voices started to sound out stories of loss and hope, of struggles that gnawed at them like unhealed wounds. A man shared how he had lost friends, the silence of goodbyes still painfully vivid. A woman spoke of her loneliness, the isolation heavy with memories. With every story shared, ripples of trust began to weave through the crowd. Mia felt the momentum shift. Tension was dissipating like fog in the morning sun. They were becoming a family, hearts beating in solidarity, facing their past together. Together we rise. Someone shouted from the back, invigorating the room to erupt in agreement. The power of collective healing was forging bonds stronger than any individual ache. It was beautiful, and it was real, but just then, a loud crack shook the ground again. This time, it wasn't the building. It was their spirits testing the limitations of fear. Mia held her breath, a mix of concern and unwavering belief flooding her. Look, she urged, pointing to the plaque on the floor. It no longer felt just like an old piece of wood. It was a manifesto, a promise, etched in their hearts. That's our motto. That's how we break free from the past. In that moment, something clicked within the shadowy figure. They stepped closer, the hardened front dissolving. I see you all are willing to rise above your pain. But are you prepared to stay committed when the storms come? Mark took a resolute step forward. We will stumble. We'll face backlash. But we're here because we believe in this community. Every voice in this room matters. And we won't shy away from confronting the storms. The room remained still, each pair of eyes searching one another for solidarity. Slowly, the figure nodded, a tentative smile creeping onto their face. Mia's heart swelled, warmth washing over her. Let today be a promise. We will work together to create a safe space for every voice, every wound. We'll build a community center that reflects our stories. The crowd erupted again, excitement teetering on the edge of celebration. What had felt so distant, so impossible, was suddenly life within their grasp. As they dove deeper into discussions about the center, dreams of gardens and youth groups flourished in the air. Mia felt empowerment rise in her chest, budding friendships forging alongside frameworks for healing. Mark caught her eye, and they shared a knowing smile. They had started out as strangers from two worlds. Today, they spoke the same language of hope, transformation, and resilience. As the meeting wrapped up, the community forged a new understanding. Fear could not stand in the way of connection. They were growing, evolving, together. Each heartbeat complemented the last, synchronized with their unspoken pledge to rise, to heal, and embrace the light. Underneath that same sky, lit by the promise of a new dawn, they gathered the fragments of their past and stitched them together with unbreakable threads of hope. The journey wouldn't be easy, but together, they would navigate the pain and emerge whole together. They would rise. You need to subscribe now to keep up with incredible stories of transformation like this. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help our community grow. Comment your feelings about this epic ending. Let us know your thoughts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait, not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.